Saturday, August 30, about 7:45. Still plenty of light in the sky. You know, in about 3 or 4 months from now, it'll be dark about this time. The sun is heading south pretty quickly towards the fall equinox. The mountains look pretty clear up there, as you can see. So it should be a fairly decent night of transparency in the sky. When sky dark arrives sometime, I'll probably get started around 9:30. The scope's all set up. I've synchronized it to Altair, and tonight I have removed, or actually I should say, I have reinstalled the Barlow lens because the aesthetics at 150x didn't cut it. But one of the things I did learn that was great is that even at twice the magnification, I was getting some pretty deep views of galaxies. It's just unfortunate that everything seems to be so gauzy and out of focus for whatever reason, either atmospherics, etc., etc. Anyway, I'm going to set the scope, Sony Handycam on the scope right now, and in about an hour and a half or so, I will be out to once again poke the sky, but we will stay with the 256 flood because I really like the idea, while I am not actually observing the NGC catalog series, of actually probing a little deeper into the night sky. All right, catch you in a bit. It's 9:15. A quick step through to see how things look with the Dumbbell Nebula Messier 27. Okay, for flood, we're seeing stars in the region. I am operating, of course, back at the normative 75x. The aesthetics were just a little too on the other side of desirable, operating at 150, although it did give quite a good view of Messier 27, the Dumbbell Nebula. We're just starting to see it now at 16 flood, nominally 6+ inches in aperture at 75x. And I will remark once again that I'm a little bit confused because I used to get better views at half that in the past, or at least comparable views. Discernibly a dumbbell now at 32 flood, the equivalent of about a 9 or a 10-inch scope. Central star, or an artifact thereof. I believe the central star is starting to reveal itself, magnitude 14.1. Starting to see the football shape at 64 flood, equivalent of about a 12-inch scope, maybe a little more, 12 to 14. 128 floods, not quite standard because ordinarily I would be operating at, operating at 42 decibels. It would appear that as soon as you change the AGC max, that you get a complete wipe of the CCD imaging array. So probably not such a good idea to have changed that back to 44.8. And 256, we'll save out, allow the image to generate itself so we get an idea of the seeing conditions this evening, although they look quite good. We got about 3 more days till the new moon. Okay. I'm kind of at a loss for what to observe tonight. I do feel like I want to go back to NGC 6928. It was a nice edge on. It's part of a group of galaxies that are about 210 to 220 million light years distant, and they range in magnitude from about 13 to 16.5, so it would be a good exploration. I do kind of remember the way they were arranged on the screen. I have to say the aesthetics of 256 flood 75X looks pretty good here on the handy cam, but when I do display them on the screen, I am less impressed. However, at 75X, the view is less constrained by any motions on my part on the floor of the observatory or when I press buttons. So there is some virtue in just leaving it at the lower magnification. But I must tell you, the view is pretty decent on the Handycam screen, and I will zoom in a little bit. There we go. And that's our view of Messier 27, the Dumbbell Planetary Nebula, as a kicker for the evening. Let's begin with NGC 6928. It's located right there on the field. It is a 12.2 magnitude galaxy, 2.1 by 0.6 arc minutes. Does give a nice view. It's a galaxy in Delphinus, right ascension 203250, plus 9 degrees, 55 minutes and 37 seconds. Meanwhile, if you look up here, you see another edge-on galaxy, fainter. That's NGC 6930. Now all these galaxies are pretty much located at about the same distance. I believe it's around 220 million light years, which puts 6928, if I'm correct, at something like 160,000 light years in diameter. We are getting a good view of both NGC 6928 and 6930. What we want to look for now is a 14.4 magnitude galaxy, which I believe is right about there, and a 16.5, which is right about here. Now all these galaxies have been reviewed in a previous video. The faintest galaxy at NGC is NGC 6927A, magnitude 16.5, but it's so small that it has the brightest per arc second average surface brightness of all 4 galaxies on the screen, which is why we're seeing it at all. And I believe it was somewhere around 22.1 ASB, while the rest of them were in the range of 22.8 and 23.2. So we are seeing all 4 of the galaxies. Meanwhile, I do believe there's a very faint satellite galaxy just to the left of NGC 6930. So there's our little tour of the NGC 6928 galaxy family. Once again, about 200 to 220 million light years distant. I believe the redshift was somewhere in the 0147? Anyway, yeah, I think it was 0.0147 region, which gives it basically determines its distance astronomically. Of course, the galaxies themselves are in motion around themselves, and our own galaxy is in motion, so some of the value for redshift converting into distance is confused by relative motions, especially among nearer galaxies. But such galaxies get a little bit more difficult to determine their distance when they're in the 70 to 100 million light year range. So the factors of relative motion have to be taken into account. So I think this is a comparable view than what I've got several nights back at 256 flood, 44.8 AGC decibels, and 75x. So there's our view. Once again, we're going to be doing some more adventitious viewing, skipping around, beginning with NGC, this series here, NGC 6928, and moving forward. Here we have NGC 6934, a globular cluster we've imaged previously. It's in Delphinus. Magnitude 8.9, 7 arc minutes in size. The brightest star is at magnitude 13.8. It is a class 8, 50,000 light years distant. This globular cluster is bright enough that it almost could have been discovered by Charles Messier. So a little bit surprising at that, especially given how condensed its light appears, even though it's a class 8 globular cluster. I'll allow it to further develop on the screen as I skip along merrily towards our next study. How about going a little bit deep south tonight? We'll go to minus 25 degrees and 16 minutes for a galaxy in Capricornus. Well, sad to say, there's a little bit of atmospheric water in the air, and we're getting a great deal of it reflected back from the city lights to the south. But anyway, NGC 6936, which is probably right about there on the screen, is a galaxy in Capricornus, magnitude 12.8, 1.8 by 1 arc minutes, lenticular spiral, 261 million light years distant. We're at right ascension 2035.56, declination minus 25.16.47. A quick look at NGC 6938, an open cluster in Vulpecula. Spilling should be mostly completely captured in the field. It's 18 by 8 arc minutes, 4,100 light years distant. We're at right ascension 2034.42, declination 22.12.55. There's no rating on this cluster, but the stars do all appear relatively close in magnitude, but are sprawling across the field, so it's not particularly dense, but the stars are pretty close together in brightness. Our next study, NGC 6941, should be interesting from the point of view that it is a galaxy in Aquila, but its magnitude is 13.5. It's fairly large for a 13.5 magnitude galaxy, 2 by 1.4 arc minutes, spiral with a lowercase b, 284 million light years distant, puts it at about 180,000 light years in diameter. Now the image is formulating on the screen, and since we're operating at 256 flood, I would expect that any galaxy 14th magnitude and brighter, as opposed to 13th magnitude and brighter, would give us some sense of structure. And looking up at this galaxy, which I believe is right about here, we are seeing a little bit of lateral extension going from about the 2 o'clock to the 7 o'clock position, and a hazy aura around the outside. So I don't know if that would qualify for your point of view as seeing any structure. But as far as I'm concerned, whenever you see anything that intimates to the actual morphology of the galaxy, you're getting a passable view. So this particular galaxy, which is at right ascension 2036.23, declination minus 4 degrees 37 minutes and 7 seconds, kind of lying outside the sky's middle third, is not giving too bad of a view, especially given the fact we can see the aura around the core region. Here we have another galaxy, roughly the same, it's a little further, roughly the same declination, minus 4 degrees, 58 minutes, 21 seconds, comparable magnitude, 13.5. I'm referring to NGC 6945, galaxy in Aquarius. As I mentioned, 13.5, but it is an oblately presented 2-to-1 aspect ratio lenticular spiral 1.6 by 0.8 arc minutes, 170 million light years distant, puts it pretty much at about the same size as our own Milky Way galaxy. So here, let's take a look at it. It's got a very bright core, brighter core than the last one, which intimates that it's probably got a higher average surface brightness, but the issue is it's not revealing much of its extensions. But anyway, it's an interesting exploration. NGC 6945. Our next study is a rather nondescript open cluster, NGC 6950 in Delphinus. 5 arc minutes in size, 3,500 light years distant. The stars pretty much look similar in magnitude. There's no population count on the screen. Not sure how this could have been determined to be an open cluster, except for the fact that maybe the stars all have a similar spectra, which indicates they were birthed out of comparable cold dark matter. 5 arc minutes in size, 3,500 light years distant. We're at right ascension 204103, declination plus 16, 36, 59. Developing on the screen now is NGC 6956, a galaxy in Delphinus. Brightest one of the evening so far, magnitude 12.3, pretty much face on at 2 by 1.9 arc minutes. It's a spiral with a bar. Look for that bar, that extension of the core, and a lowercase b, twice removed from a lenticular. It's 211 million light years distant, puts it at about 130,000 light years in diameter. It's at right ascension 204353 and declination plus 12 degrees 30 minutes and 41 seconds. It's pretty close to culminating, and it's in the sky's middle third. The galaxy itself is quite close to this bright star, probably a 12th magnitude star right there. 6956. We have seen NGC 6960 before. It's a supernova remnant in Cygnus. Collective magnitude is magnitude 7, but it's very large, 210 by 160 arc minutes, 1,500 light years distant. I believe this supernova went off about 10,000 years ago, if I'm remembering correctly. We're at right ascension 204550, declination 304230. As a supernova remnant, it is highly ionized in terms of the particulate that's in it, and it will also contain a lot of heavy astronomical metals, because supernovas usually do the main hard work of depositing trans-Iranian metals, because they are synthesized at the time of the actual explosion of the supernova. The common name for this particular part of the Veil Nebula, the Veil Complex, is the Witch's Broom, and I'm glad we're getting a chance to image it at 256 flood at the highest sensitivity rating. Now, most of the eastern and western veil, this happens to be the western veil, is quite visible in small telescopes at very low power. You want to condense as much of the luminosity of magnitude 7 into as small an eyepiece field as possible. The best views are when you get like a 4-inch refractor with a nebula filter, and you frame it at about 25x. You can see the entire veil complex in that kind of a situation. So I think this is a pretty decent view, and in the future, if I do another tour of the Veil Complex, I'll definitely want to do it at 256 flood, 44.8 auto gain control decibels. Okay, we've moved on to NGC 6962 with the ghost of, I think, 52 Cygni still lingering on the screen. NGC 6962 is a galaxy in Aquarius. Brightest one so far, magnitude 12.1, 2.9 by 2.2 arc minutes. So this one's about 120,000 light years in diameter. It's a spiral with a bar and a lowercase ab, which means 1.5 times removed from the lenticular class. The galaxy is at right ascension 204719, pretty much right on the celestial equator, a mere 19 minutes and 14 seconds north of it. There are actually, obviously, at least 2, possibly more galaxies on the screen right here, maybe another one over there. So we are pretty much encountering a galaxy group. It'll be interesting if we come back to this region of the sky to identify one or more other of the galaxies in Aquarius that NGC 6962 is a member of. All right, skipping over a star, which was NGC 6963, we end up at NGC 6964, a neighboring galaxy to 6962 in Aquarius. Slightly fainter, magnitude 13, 1.7 by 1.3 arc minutes. This is an elliptical class 4, excuse me, with a P, peculiarities, 174 million light years distant. The peculiarity typically occurs because there's some kind of gravitational interaction with a neighboring galaxy. Ellipticals are fairly mature galaxies, and they get to be that way because they've gone through a number of assimilative processes of their satellites and other galaxies in their region, just as our own Milky Way and the Great Andromeda Galaxy will undergo some 3 billion years hence. We are at right ascension 204724, and once again the declination is just north by 18 minutes and 2 seconds of the celestial Earth's celestial equator. A third, fainter galaxy in the NGC 6960, I believe it was 2 group, is NGC 6965 in Aquarius. This one's even fainter than 60, I believe it was 64. Magnitude 14, it's a face-on lenticular 0.7 by 0.7 arc minutes in apparent size, 194 million light years distant. It's at right ascension 204720, and it's slightly further north at 28 minutes and 59 seconds. So there is a third member of the 6962, I believe, galaxy group. Now we're on to a fourth member of the same group, NGC 6967. Galaxy in Aquarius, this one's brighter, magnitude 13.1, football aspect ratio, not 0.9 to 0.6 arc minutes, spiral with a lowercase a, 168 million light years distant. We're at right ascension 204734, and a little further north at 24 arc minutes plus 41 seconds. I'll allow this one to develop a little bit as we see if there might be a fifth one. Well, no, this one will not be in the previous NGC 6962 galaxy group because it's at minus 8 degrees, 21 minutes and 36 seconds. Shall we make the leap? Okay, given the amount of atmospheric water vapor in the sky to the south, I probably don't want to go much further south than this one. NGC 6968 is a galaxy in Aquarius, magnitude 14, 1.5 by 1.1 arc minutes. Lenticular spiral, 279 million light years distant. We're at right ascension 204832, declination minus 8 degrees, 21 minutes and 36 seconds. The galaxy is apparent right there on the screen. And frankly, it looks like it's giving us a little sense of structure from what I can tell. Unless, of course, that is a neighboring brighter galaxy than NGC 6968. I'm not paying too much attention to this line that went across the screen right here, whatever that may have been. Almost looks like some kind of script. We're now at NGC 6969, a galaxy in Delphinus, magnitude 14. The reason I selected it is it has a nice aspect ratio of 1.1 to 0.3, so almost 4 to 1. So we should be seeing something that looks very, almost purely edge-on. Spiral with a lowercase a, 212 million light years distant. We're at right ascension 2048.27 and declination plus 7 degrees 44 minutes and 23 seconds. I don't want to shift around too much, but I do believe I am seeing kind of an edgy-on galaxy in this region right about there. NGC 6972, another galaxy, this one's in Delphinus, is magnitude 13.3, almost a little flatter than 2 to 1 aspect ratio, 1.1 by 0.5 arc minutes, spiral with a lowercase a, 204 million light years distant. It's probably about 60,000, 65,000 light years in diameter. It's at right ascension 2049.58. plus 9 degrees 53 minutes and 56 seconds. Okay, I've been making relatively small leaps, but I have been jumping over galaxies that pretty much hinted at other galaxies we've already seen. What I'm going to do now is look for anything out of the ordinary, because I think I want to get to, I believe it was NGC 7016, which was a fairly interesting galaxy picked up the other night. What I'm hoping to see here will be another component of the Veil complex. NGC 6974, supernova remnant in Cygnus. Distance once again of 1500 light years. We're at right ascension 205104. Declination plus 3149.42. I'll allow it to continue to develop, if possible, on the screen as I skip ahead. There is another component of the Veil complex, NGC 6979. Let's see if we can get a look at that. It's fairly small, so it may turn up on the screen. NGC 6979, part of the Veil complex in Cygnus, is a mere 3 by 2 arc minutes in size, and like the rest of it, 1500 light years distant. We're at right ascension 2050.28, declination plus 3201.26. I'll leave it up as I continue to skip forward in order to find more studies of interest. I am rather intrigued by NGC 6981, globular cluster in Aquarius. Magnitude 9.2, 5.9 arc minutes in size. The brightest stars are magnitude 14.2. It's a class 9 cluster, which means not particularly condensed with stars. 55,000 light years distant is impressive. We're at right ascension 2053.27, declination minus 1232.14. The reason I'm intrigued is this one is actually discovered by Messier or Messiaen in the 1780s, and this is about the faintest globular cluster. There was a brighter one of roughly the same size earlier that went unseen by them. So this one's about half a magnitude fainter, so quite intriguing. NGC 6981, Messier 72 in Aquarius. Okay, we're, I believe, the final component of the Veil complex in Cygnus. This is NGC 6992. It's the easternmost component. There may be another one, but I'm not sure. This one is the most spectacular of the complex. You can see it sprawling across the field. Very beautiful with lots of detail and filamentation in it. It's magnitude 7, like the Western Veil, but it's much smaller, 60 by 8 arc minutes, 1,500 light years distant, right ascension 20, 56, 19, and declination plus 31, 44, 36. It's practically culminating overhead. We are operating at 256 flood, 44.2 decibels, and there is a nebula filter in here, or at least a Lumicon deep sky filter installed. So this is probably the best view that I have gotten using the REV II system with the 6-inch refractor, and over the last 3 years that two to 3 years that I've been out in the backyard observatory capturing real-time imagery. So enjoy as I continue to skip along a little bit. Can you believe it? There is a Messier 73 and it is magnitude 9.7. Wow, they detected that one. We should have a look. Well, I did misspeak. Messier 73 is actually an open cluster in Aquarius. Still, at magnitude 9.7 is fairly faint, but the reason why it may have been discovered as an open cluster is because it's quite small. 2.8 arc minutes. It only consists of 4 stars, brightest of magnitude 10. I think this may be one of the spurious studies that Messier came up with. Hard to believe a mere 4 stars in an open cluster. We're at right ascension 20, 58, 56, declination minus 12, 38, 07. All right, I do believe we actually have arrived at the final component of the Veil complex. This is NGC 6995, supernova remnant in Cygnus, magnitude 7, 12 arc minutes in size, so its average surface brightness should be somewhere around 14. And we should be able to get a pretty good view of this one. In fact, I do believe I am seeing some of the sprawl on the screen. Once again, 1,500 light years distant, right ascension 20, 57, 10, declination plus 31 degrees, 13 minutes and 6 seconds. Let's allow this one to continue accumulating photonage as I skip through a little bit. 6996 is an open cluster in Cygnus. 97 is another open cluster. 98 is a galaxy in Microscopium, too far south at minus 28 degrees. Ordinarily I might have gone there, but we have not gotten good views that far south this evening. Another galaxy in Microscopium, 6999, and it would be, if on a good clear southern sky, we would want to take a look at it, even though it's magnitude 14. There's a nebula in Cygnus, 7000, that's the North American nebula. We will not be viewing it, it's much too large and so sprawled out that you can hardly tell you're looking at a nebula. 7001 is a galaxy in Aquarius. Magnitude 12.9 could be interesting, but we've seen a number of that type of galaxy tonight. There's a magnitude 13 galaxy in Delphinus, 7/003. There's a group of stars in Aquarius, 7/005. There's a globular cluster in Delphinus. Now that one could be interesting. Its brightest stars are magnitude 15.7, but it's 15.6. But it's very small. However, it's incredibly distant. By the way, the view of the final component of the veil is quite spectacular, is it not? Well, as the swirling arms of the final component of the veil complex begins to disappear, I want to point out that NGC 7006 looks quite galactic, doesn't it? But it's a globular cluster in Delphinus. The magnitude is 10.6. However, it's only 2.8 arc minutes in size. A magnitude 10.6 galaxy would typically be in the 5 to 6 arc minute range. The core would not nearly be as condensed as what we're seeing here. We'd see extensions going out quite a ways away from the core. The brightest stars in globular clusters NGC 70006 are magnitude 15.6. We're not likely to get much of a view of them because this is a class 1. This is one of the tightest globular cluster configurations you can see. It is 133,000 light years distant. So if we divide that in half to 65, it would be about 6 arc minutes. If we divided that in half, it would be about 12.5, which is about half the size of the Great Hercules globular cluster, but that cluster is not nearly as packed with stars. So quite a nice look at NGC 70006 in Delphinus. NGC 7013 is a galaxy in Cygnus. It is magnitude 11.3, 4.5 by 1.4 arc minutes, spiral of the lowercase a mere 35 million light years distant, which puts it probably somewhere around 40,000 light years in diameter. It's at right ascension 21 hours, 3 minutes, and 33 seconds. So we're now about 3 hours away from 0 hour in right ascension. Declination is plus 2953.49. I am going to skip along a little bit and see if there's another study, but I am very tempted to call this our Carpe Noctem view of the evening.